Good morning. I want to welcome you to the MEDICARE Show. I'm your host and Medicare advisor, Jeffrey Kuhn. Today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Ozempic. It seems to be a very, very popular prescription. And this is going to kick off the first series, specifically on some of the most common prescription drugs that people are paying a small fortune for in 2024. The goal of this podcast is really to educate you on what to expect in 25 and to get a better understanding of how this is going to work and what you can expect to pay. This is the most significant change for folks that are on these more expensive prescriptions that are actually going to benefit from the Inflation Reduction Act and this $2,000 cap on prescription drug costs for next year. A lot of people this year I've seen, God, every week there's more people, Ozempic, Eliquis, Repatha, Jardiance, there's a whole list of them. And we're reviewing what are the best plans and options that are going to have the least amount of costs and provide the best coverage in 2025. And these prescriptions I've seen they're so commonly prescribed. And again, weekly we have multiple people either just getting these prescriptions or have been on them. So I'm going to start off with just talking about what it costs. That's a good baseline. We'll talk about this year in 2024, and we're going to breach into next year, 25, and what people are going to be paying depending on the plan you have and what you really need to look for. I'm just going to use an example. There's several ways that Ozempic is prescribed, but I'm just going to use a 4 milligram / 3 ml solution pen injector. I'm going to do this on a 90-day prescription because this is prescribed in 90 days. Some drugs they don't dispense on 90, they only do 30. But we're going to talk about the 3 milliliter pens, and we're going to do a quantity of 3. We're going to talk about this every 3 months. If you currently are getting that prescription filled or you've been on it, you know what the donut hole is. Medicare changed the name of it from the donut hole. They just called it the coverage gap. It's exactly the same thing. When the retail price of your prescription hits around $5,000 for this year, roughly, most people all of a sudden get a jump up in price. And the first thing I'm going to start off with is when you get these prescriptions, the pharmacies don't use the right language. It confuses people, and I've seen more people make medical decisions based on the wrong information that your pharmacy is telling you. When you get a prescription filled in the beginning of the year and you have a deductible for prescriptions that are tier 3 and higher, you're going to pay a deductible first. It's annual, you pay it once. I cannot tell you, everybody I talk to that comes to me about these prescriptions says the same thing. And it's that my pharmacy, when I went to get my prescription, told me my copay was. And that copay is not the copay, it's the deductible. And people think every time they get their prescription filled that, oh my God, I got to pay this every single time. I can't afford this. I'm not going to get it. And they make medical decisions based on this. And I wish the pharmacists and these pharmacies would get it right, because this is a major, major problem. And I probably should do a podcast on that in and of itself. But after you get your initial prescription filled, you go into a copay or co-insurance structure. And with this particular drug, if we look at a 90-day supply, it's $3,400 roughly. That's roughly the retail price depending where you get it filled. And Medicare tracks this out-of-pocket cost. So in 2024, when that retail price, it's like a shopping basket. So the second time you get it filled, you will hit the donut hole, the coverage gap, and you will then be responsible for 25% of the cost of that prescription. That quickly escalates to $850 from a copay, depending where it is in your formulary. Most of the clients that we have them in copay structures. Let's just say it's in the $42+ range, and they can get 90-day supply of Ozempic for $84. And that all of a sudden jumps up to that higher amount because they're in the donut hole. Now, we've got folks that have just come in the last week or so, and they have not yet hit that because it's the fourth quarter of 2024, and they're just getting prescribed that. So they haven't hit that out-of-pocket max. And for some of them, they're going to be blessed because they're not going to experience this infamous donut hole, which is a painful place to be financially. And all that's changing for next year. And it's pretty surprising if you understand how Medicare calculates all this. So instead of paying thousands of dollars, and that's typically what happens in 2024, people are going to end up paying hundreds if they plan appropriately and plan the right way, because not all plans are created equal. And I'm going to run through an example of Ozempic for next year. Still have deductibles. Some companies charge more, some charge less. And a lot of people you've seen, or a lot of plans, they're paying higher deductibles because Medicare's standard benefit level is a $590 deductible in 2025, and then you're responsible for 25% of the costs up until you hit $2,000. Now, however, this is where it gets interesting. They will give you the benefit of 25% of the retail price, or if your insurance plan has a copay, the higher of the two gets credited towards your $2,000 out-of-pocket max. And I use the word crediting because, we start with $2,000, we have to kind of work that down to zero, and then you don't pay any more for your prescriptions. And Ozempic just by itself, it's really efficient with how, if you get that aligned with the right drug plan, how that's going to work for you for next year. And usually people are on multiple prescriptions. And the rest of them, if we look at Ozempic in of itself, you're not going to pay very much more. In any other prescriptions you might get, you might not pay anything, depending what you have. So Ozempic, let's talk about an example of this for 2025. You walk into your pharmacy in January, and we're going to make a couple assumptions here. You have a Medicare plan, and I'm not going to say if it's standalone Part D or if it's a Medicare Advantage plan. We're just going to assume you've got a Medicare-based drug plan, Part D plan. You're going to have a deductible, roughly, I'm going to say $380 to $400. We're not going to go on the high side of $590, and we're going to assume on Tier 3 prescriptions you've got a copay, a deductible, and you've got co-pays, not co-insurance. This is where it's really critical, and I'm going to say this again, that you don't want to end up having co-insurance on your Tier 3 medications because it doesn't work efficiently. Certainly not like copay structures do. So we go get Ozempic filled. We're going to go get a 90-day supply come January. And what happens? Well, we're going to walk into the pharmacy and we're going to pick that up, and they're going to tell us, oh, we have to pay a copay. That our copay is going to be, let's say, $380. And that is not a copay. That is your deductible. So you need to ask them, because I hate to say this, but I think they need to be educated around this because it's really hurting the consumer. So you've got a deductible you're going to pay as a Tier 3 medication, and then you go into copay structure. So let's assume the $380 copay. We're going to pay that, and we're going to get a 90-day prescription because that is the most efficient way to get this prescription. What's that going to cost? Well, on a monthly basis, it's $42, but we're going to look at a plan that will give you a 90-day supply and only pay 2 copays at $84. So what's going to happen? We pay that $380 deductible, and then we're going to pay an $84 copay, and we got 90-day supply. That starts off our Ozempic prescription. We're going to get that filled 2 more times. We're going to get filled in April, and we're going to get filled in July. We're going to walk in. So January, we're going to pay $464 total for that prescription. One time. Or you can spread that out with Medicare's prescription payment program, and they'll average out the cost of your drugs over the cost, average per month over the cost of the year, and they recalculate that on a monthly basis. You should have seen something in the mail about from your insurance company if you decide to do the Medicare's prescription payment program for 2025, what those costs will be. But let's assume it's April now. You're going to get that drug filled. $84 is what you're going to pay as a copay for a 90-day supply with this specific insurance plan. You're going to get a credit of 25% of the retail price towards your out-of-pocket max. So 25% of the retail price is about $850. You're only paying $84. During July, and that would be the beginning of your third quarter as far as getting that prescription filled, and you may not even need to do 90 days, but honestly, it works much better because you do get a month free, is when you get that 25% of the retail price credited, and you're only paying $84, but you're getting credit of another $850, you've basically depleted that $2,000 out-of-pocket max down to zero. So you're done for the year. You've paid total $464 in January. If you just pay this all out of pocket and don't do the payment program. April, you pay $84. In July, you pay $84, and you're done for the year. So what's that mean? How much have you actually paid? Between your deductible and your copays, you're out of pocket total of $632 for the year. That's it. You've met your $2,000 out-of-pocket max. So it's very confusing when Medicare puts out there, you have a $2,000 out-of-pocket max, but they really don't do a good job of explaining it because most people don't understand it. And there's not very many resources you can go to get this type of information. But let's just take a look and say, okay, we're going to spend $600, let's say $32 for the year. And all pharmacies, they're different. So I'm looking at in-network preferred pharmacies, which with any good plan, I'll say the majority of them you should be able to find in that. There's some insurance programs that you have to use one pharmacy only. But with that Medicare prescription payment program, we take the cost, and instead of paying that huge deductible for a lot of people in the beginning of the year, and having to fork out $464 for your deductible in your first 90-day prescription, it's going to cost you, let's just say, around $53 per month, estimated. And you just pay that, and you walk out and you get your prescription. That's monthly. If you do, let me recalculate that because that's really not going to work right for you because you are going to get them quarterly. So we got to multiply that by 3. So we're looking at $158. That's what it's going to cost you for each time you have that filled every 3 months, and that's it. And then you're done for the year. That should equal that total out-of-pocket cost. So with Ozempic, there's good news coming for those of you that are on it. And usually your other prescriptions, it may change that or alter that a little bit because when you start combining them, they look at the retail price, depending what your copays are, and the percentage you get. That might be a little bit higher, but the great news is the most you're ever going to pay per month for your prescriptions, and you can have the most expensive prescriptions. As long as they're covered by your insurance and they're in formulary, the most you're going to pay is about $167 a month per month, and that covers everything. So hopefully you found this podcast helpful. It was just a short discussion on Ozempic, how that's going to work. Likely you're going to do Eliquis next. I'll get into the Omnipods, which is an insulin delivery system. That's a Part B medication. We have a lot of clients on that. Repatha, Jardiance, those are all coming as well. So if you found this helpful, anybody on Ozempic that you've talked to, I'm sure they're going to find this information helpful, and certainly is going to help you look at your plan a little bit closer to help understand what you might pay. And if you have any questions or issues, you can always reach out to us, especially if you're licensed or we're licensed in one of the states where we can be able to help you find the plan that's going to work more efficiently. So please, again, like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll look forward to getting you another one out here shortly. Bye-bye.